How are you?
Fantastic. Thank you for asking me to join you today.
Of course. Thank you for coming on. I was excited that you had the time to devote to this. You have a lot going on today?
Today, not really. Kind of because every day is a lot, but it's kind of chill. We have a rest day today, so I already got the gym out of the way as far as like getting my cardio and steps in, and yeah, now we're just hanging out and gonna get some work done.
Yeah, that's the best, right? Like whenever, I mean, for me, like personally, I love working out early on. Then I can just
Yes.
kind of get it. I enjoy working out, but there is but if it's later in the day, I always do things with the thought that, oh, I'm gonna have to train later, so I have to like kind of move things around or whatnot. But if I can get it out of the way early, then the rest of the day is free, you know?
Totally, totally. I
Yeah.
also just love a rest day. So I soak these days up. Yeah.
Yeah, nice, nice. Well, again, thank you so much for coming on. I greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, and I was gonna ask you, how did you get involved in training, nutrition, the fitness industry altogether?
Oh man. Um, I've always been heavily involved. So I would say one, seeing my mom always do it ever since I was literally in diapers and watching her be this very structured person with her health and fitness,
Hmm.
which obviously then I started to catch on to those habits and that kind of routine. And then being a gymnast, going through sports, and then eventually, participating in the gym world and
Yeah.
just really stuck to it. But as far as like competing goes, that is a lot of it was started within CrossFit.
Hmm.
That for me had been like a decade of my life. And I branched off and away from that about 3 or just over 3 years ago at this point. And then I got back into what I used to love, which was bodybuilding.
It's interesting. So, just kind of go back a little bit. You said your mom was always involved in it. Was she just involved in like everyday kind of working out and keeping herself together, or was she competitive?
Very much so lifestyle, just a lifestyle.
Lifestyle. Hmm.
Yeah, she had no idea what consisted of like bodybuilding or anything along those lines until I kind of forced her to understand and be a part of my journey.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
just I was thinking it's so important for there's such a like an issue with health in America, but also just really across the world. I mean, it's kind of spreading. And I was just thinking it's so important to have like parents that give you like a good as good role model for you to kind of follow.
Yeah.
Often you'll see parents that are unhealthy, well, then the children become, unhealthy. And maybe later on, the children will, once they get a little older, they will make decisions for themselves. Maybe they will become healthier, but it's a much harder process than
Yeah.
going ahead and starting out early, and I feel like a lot of times parents don't like, they kind of separate themselves from their children, but it's hard to do that because like your children watch and see and do everything you do. So
Sponges. Yeah,
yeah.
we're sponges, right? So I agree with that for sure. That's like when I eventually have children, that is something that will be, I mean, it'll just be my life, right? Like this
Right.
won't change for me, but top priority for sure is for them to want to see, especially for, doesn't matter if it's I have a son or a daughter, right?
Hmm.
For them to see their mother, a woman figure in their life, being able to do things like this and then
Hmm.
represent a different kind of understanding of what strength is, that's important to me for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. I was listening to RX Muscle actually recently, one of their episodes, their podcasts, and they said something interesting, which I actually have seen kind of over the years, but they said that like right now, if you walk into most gyms, like who's training the hardest? It's always the women. Like nowadays, it's always like the women that are training hard, the ones that like don't want to be bothered, that are so it's like I feel like that's like it's a it's a big difference from even when I was, at a younger age. So, and it wasn't that wasn't that long ago. So, I mean, I definitely think women have I don't know if progressed is the right word, but definitely like evolved, and
For sure.
the way fitness is viewed with regard to women is different now, too.
Absolutely.
So,
I mean, even when I started, right, like it's crazy because there are always certain things and they tend to be like the negative comments that just stick to you.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I remember in high school lifting and feeling so good about what I was doing at the time. And then this little thin man at the grocery store asked me, "Do you work out?" And yes, I get we work out, you can tell, right? He
right.
was just make sure you don't get too big because otherwise you're going to start looking manly. But he was
Hmm.
like, looking at me up and down. And it was always those comments of don't get too big, don't do too much. One,
Yeah,
you're making a comment about my figuring what it should look like. And then two, like, what is like, we just have different definitions of what a woman should look like and how they should be represented in the
right.
public eye. It's crazy, but
Yeah. And I also think, like, I mean, one, it's a generational thing. Two,
yes,
people don't understand, like, lifting weights, being strong, putting on muscle doesn't make you look manly. I mean, we can go into that like side of things, but really that's more having to do with like whatever, PEDs or supplements and things like that that are getting involved, where that could potentially happen. But it's like, but just the lifting weights, getting strong, and like, and just working out doesn't make you look manly. I mean, everyone should be doing that, should be working out, getting stronger. Like, there's not, just because you're a female doesn't mean you should become like weak. It's like that's so weird to even think about it, but a lot of people, did,
yeah,
so
totally, absolutely, could not agree enough.
yeah, yeah, it's always strange because, like, I'm so far removed from people that think like that, but every once in a while you'll come across somebody that still feels that way, and I'm like, do you like
Yes.
what year are we living in? Like, really? But
Literally, as simple as like always. I agree with you. I'm very far removed from having those kinds of people or that kind of
mhm,
influence in my life. But like when I was in prep and forgetting what I looked like walking around in a tank top or something, and then I would go to a grocery store and people would just be like, "What is that?"
yeah,
And I'd
yeah,
be like, "Why are they looking at me?" And then I'm like, "Well, this isn't really normal. Like people don't normally just
right,
walk around looking like this." But it's fascinating how it's so, like, I guess it's just such an foreign thing to
hmm,
see,
hmm,
which it shouldn't be. Because when you're talking about a certain level of leanness, maybe that doesn't have
yeah,
to walk around so often. But yeah, to like have the eyes constantly be protruding out of people's heads is like, well, why is this so uncommon for you to like think
yeah.
it's normal?
Yeah, it's I mean, part of it is I feel like we live in like a society that's I don't know if weak is the right word, but it's just a society that like doesn't really focus on physical activity. It's like, so I mean, if you think about, I think, where did I don't know where I read it, but it was like less than 1% of people work out, and like, and that's just work, that's like go to the gym and work and just do basic like movements, and then when you cut that down to people that work out seriously, then you cut that down even more to people who are competitive, then I mean, you're becoming like, I mean, the most highest percentage of like the human race at that point, so
Yeah.
yeah, wild, wild. And what's interesting too is that you're in a division. So just to make sure I remember correctly, you're in wellness, right? So
Yes.
yeah, so you're in a division that's, like a feminine, very feminine division, right? So it's like, it's not like you're in bodybuilding. I would hate, like, I would wonder what like those people would see if they saw somebody like Iris Kyle or something come through.
Yeah, for sure. For
Yeah.
sure. And it's interesting too, because and my coach and his co-host for his podcast, they just had a episode about femininity within the sport. And
Mhm.
it's not just like what you're looking at. And they broke it down so beautifully, but this is something I couldn't have always agreed with, is like how the individual actually carries themselves from day to day. Right.
Sure.
So like, how am I dressing? Or when I'm representing myself on stage, am I coming off in a feminine way? Or do
Mhm.
I not practice enough with my routine where some of the ways that I'm trying to go about my posing is now coming off masculine?
Mhm. Mhm. I,
Um,
I completely understand where you're coming from, because I forgot which Olympia was it. It wasn't this last one, but maybe it was the one before this, and I forgot who the women's physique champion was. Sarah, I forgot her last name, but anyway, so the point, she, women's physique, fairly muscular division,
yeah, yeah,
straightforward, and like one step down from bodybuilding. But the way she did
carried
her routine was so feminine,
yeah,
and it's like it was very feminine. My wife didn't watch it, but I told her, I was like, hey, you got to see this. So I like rolled it back, and she was so amazed. And it's, so to your point, yeah, like absolutely, how you carry yourself determines, how you look. So yeah.
totally. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. So so get into, competitive bodybuilding from CrossFit. What made you switch over anyway from CrossFit to bodybuilding?
There was a little bit of time where I just took a break and I actually stepped away from CrossFit. A big part of it was because I, one, needed a break. My body was beaten down completely. Like
Hmm.
when I started thinking I was like done with my competitions, at that point I was like, oh, I finally feel better. It was like after my last competition I had ever done, where I thought my body was okay. And then all of a sudden I started training regularly again. And I just broke down, like my collarbone, my shoulders. It was just everything. And I got very turned off by constantly feeling beaten down. Then I also went through a phase where I was like not in love with the way that I looked. And to each their own, right? But I was becoming, like, you see those CrossFit females, especially, that are very boxy looking.
Right, right.
And that's just the way you end up looking because of the training.
Hmm.
Just as much as like a bikini competitor is training to look like that, you end up eventually becoming that, right? Same with
Right,
wellness
right.
and so on and so forth. But there was a time when I was done and I like threw the cards and I was like, it's over for me. And I was good and very happy with that decision. I
Hmm.
was like, I swore up and down, I'm done with competing. I have no interest in ever entering bodybuilding. And somebody had brought that to my attention and was like, you could do really well. And I was like, I
Hmm.
have no desire. And at that time too, I said, I was like, I love food too much. And I was so insecure within myself that I never thought it would be possible to get to a point where I would be like, okay, judges, like,
Yeah,
judge away, because you're stripping down to
yeah.
basically nothing. And you're saying, judge me up and down.
You're like, figure me out. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Tell me what's wrong.
Yeah, literally. Exactly. And then, yeah, so I had a little bit of time in between. I actually started dabbling with the idea of wanting to get involved, where I wasn't doing anything except living a very bodybuilding lifestyle. Like the
Hmm.
training was that. Um, yeah. And then I got more and more heavily interested in wanting to get into it. And then my personality is like, once I make a decision, it's a wrap. And
You're all in. Yeah.
so I did that. And it was about probably like a year and a half, 2 years ago, where I started to think that. And then it was because now I'm with my coach in August, a year. So it
Hmm.
was just before that that I was like, I want to start looking for a coach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so yeah, about that mindset. I'm kind of in the same boat. I feel like a lot of athletes have that kind of mindset where I don't like doing things halfway, because partially, I value my time. And so I feel like if I'm doing things halfway, I'm just wasting my time. Like I'm not going to be good enough at this thing because I'm not putting enough time. So I'm just wasting it, And so I completely understand where you're coming from, where it's like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right,
Yeah.
So yeah. So was wellness what year was this? Was wellness around at that time? Because it's,
Yeah.
fairly new division.
Yeah. Wellness, I think this is still showing you how new I am to all of this.
Mm-hmm.
I think it came to the US about 4 or 5 years ago at this point.
So the first year of the pandemic, I was planning on going to the Arnold, and
Okay.
of course, I didn't end up going because the pandemic, obviously.
Yeah.
But that year was when Fran and Issa did the Arnold, and
Yeah.
Fran won.
Right.
Um, so that I believe that's considered the first year, right? I would think.
Oh, then maybe, yeah.
Was it 2019, or did they do like a kind of like
Hmm.
a soft run before that? Maybe, I don't know. Anyways,
I wish I had that information to give to you. I don't even know.
yeah. No, it's okay. It's all
Yeah.
right. I'm just kind of like just brainstorming and
Yeah.
but yeah, it was, you said wellness was around at the time that you entered.
Yep. So wellness was around. And when I saw that wellness was a new division, I thought immediately to myself that this division would just make sense for me, my
Mm-hmm.
genetics, my passion for training, all of that. Because obviously my figure and my genetics play a huge role, and that they always should play a huge role for the individual to get
Mm-hmm.
involved into a specific division. But passion for training has a huge part to do with it, right? Like if I
Yeah.
really wanted to do bikini, which I'm just not built like that anyway, but
Mm-hmm.
they feel like, okay, well, stop training now with your legs.
Mm-hmm.
Expect to never train your legs again, because you obviously need to come down in size a whole ton. And I
Yeah.
love training my legs.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. I just had somebody on the podcast who's a bikini competitor, and she understood that she would just have to like not train certain body parts as hard or at all, but that was the look that she wanted to have for herself, which you can't really argue with that. It's just, for me personally, if somebody told me that, it would be difficult for me to accept.
Right, right.
Like, I'm not, you don't want me to work out? I thought the whole point was to work out. I'm like,
Yeah.
but that's just a different mentality, different mindset. So yeah, no, I understand. So you were like, I'm just going for wellness for sure, 100%. That's
Yeah. So I was very interested in wellness, but I was open to the idea that if I spoke to a coach that I really wanted to work with, and they were like, hey, listen, I think you would really do well in this division, then I
mm-hmm.
would consider it. But my heart was really set on wellness. And when I spoke to my coach, he was actually, no, he was the second coach I had spoken to. But I said, I was like, what do you think? Like, do I belong in wellness, or would you suggest something else? He was like, no, wellness.
Mm-hmm.
We chose wellness, and I signed up with him that day, and we rolled with it. And then,
Have you always had like lower body dominant?
yes,
Okay.
I was a gymnast, so definitely built that growing up, plus my genetics
Mm-hmm.
for sure.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So it made it easy transition. Was there anything that you like had to work on more so? I mean, obviously, if you're initially getting into it, you're building overall muscle. But like, was there something that you were like, I gotta focus on this, on my body?
Yeah. So with my legs, they just needed to come up in size a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Glutes, for sure. We had to hammer away at glutes, and hamstrings specifically too. I mean, quads got a lot of work in there too, but I was definitely more quad dominant than anything else. So we really hammered down, growing my hamstrings and my glutes.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I've always had great shoulders, especially from CrossFit. Like that, just like they were like coconuts when I was training. But I had a small little session with Steve Weinberger, and we got
Mm-hmm.
into the posing room, And he was like, we need to grow your delts. Like you
Mm-hmm.
have good shape, but we need them to be bigger, especially when you lean out. So we took that to my coach and he started giving me more shoulder exercises,
Mm-hmm.
more delt exercises. And yeah, so we brought my shoulders up quite a bit, which helped me a lot for my
Yeah.
division.
Yeah, I'm just looking at like some of the pictures that you have on your Instagram. Yeah, I mean, like the shoulders definitely look good. I mean, so yeah, whatever you guys did definitely worked. Was it? Did you do mostly like just heavy, low volume or high volume work for them?
For the majority of my prep, because when we were told that I needed to grow my delts, we were just starting prep. We were like literally in the first week. I think my rep block at that point was, I don't think it was 12 to 15. I think we were at 10 to 12, and
Mm-hmm.
then it got knocked down slightly to 8 to 10. But I was training heavy
Yeah.
every session. And I am one, I love training heavy, but two, I'm good at pushing with heavy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm good at
Mm-hmm.
pushing my intensity. So we trained heavy and we trained hard
Yeah.
every session. Yeah.
There's something about, I mean, volume works, definitely works. I'm not going to say it doesn't, but there's something about pushing like heavy weight that like stimulates that growth. Like, and
Oh,
I mean, logically it makes sense, right? Because your muscles like forced to grow under that kind of pressure. But,
yeah.
it's, I always have a hard time like usually when I talk to people that I coach or train, I like to see kind of like what they respond to because there are people that respond to a lot of volume. But personally, I like a good combination of both. I think that like tends to work for most people, but heavyweight, you can't deny it. You can't deny it. That's,
Yeah. And also time under tension. Like
hmm
he does not let me just rep things out unless they're partial reps at the end, where maybe I'll speed
hmm
up a little bit to just
right.
really go to failure at that point. But everything's to failure and everything has a tempo to it. So I'm never not holding or, descending on negatives at like a certain time.
Yeah.
So there's always like a 3-1-2-1 time type of
hmm
tempo.
Yeah, that's to your point as far as like being quad dominant. I feel like a lot of people, men and women, tend to be quad dominant. It's always like the hamstrings that need a lot of work. I don't know if it's just the way we walk or what we do in our daily lives, like puts a lot more, you
Mhm.
know, pressure on the quad, but it feels like not too many people have problems with quads. They mostly have problems with hamstrings, so
Yeah. And also CrossFit didn't help that for me. Everything was quads.
yeah.
Everything between like all the metcons that you do, wall balls, air
hmm
squats,
hmm
the Olympic lifting. Oh my God, everything was quad dominant for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, I wonder, and this is strictly speculating, but I wonder if working one muscle group like that all the time puts you at higher risk of like injury, because you're overworking one part and underworking another part. So there's going to be a weakness in the chain.
100%. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think there was like ever a period of time throughout the year where I was like, I feel great every
Yeah.
part of it, right? Which is normal. But if it wasn't my knees, it would relocate to my hips. If it wasn't my hips, it's my back, right? So,
Yeah.
which obviously all of it's stemming from some main issue at hand. But I was always injured. Like there was just something always going on. And it was definitely two parts. One, I would say the overtraining. And two, it was also on my party of not taking care of myself the way I do now. So
Sure.
not setting up PT appointments the way that I like structure that weekly in now.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you sleep well?
I do.
That's good. That's a good thing.
Yes. So when I am stressed, no.
hmm
So I recently moved into my boyfriend's apartment, and that whole like period of moving stresses me out because of like the chaos that you're living
Of
around.
course. Yeah.
And I'm just I like things in place and I like things like tip top shape.
Yeah.
So having boxes in my stuff like everywhere, it was like, oh, and I just got out of prep when I did that.
Yeah.
So I started prep in February and I ended it June 30th, which was,
hmm
universe, which I competed in.
Mm-hmm.
And I prioritized the shit out of sleep and stress. And then I went from that to moving and going like face
Yeah.
on with
So it
all
just
of
shot
my,
up.
oh my gosh, which
Mhm.
declined my sleep.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I also physically had a very rough response to that. And we're
Yeah.
finally out of it.
How does your response manifest? Is it did you gain like a bunch of rebound weight, or did you like just feel terrible? Like what happened?
Both.
Both.
Yeah. So I had my prescribed free meals, which were allowed, right? Or he was allowing me in particular. And then I was also taking my numbers that he prescribed me, so my macros, and I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna follow this, but I also wanted to like, I missed cooking, I missed Greek yogurt, things that
Mm-hmm.
weren't in my meal plan prior. And my body was like, no, 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 like you're not ready for this. So
Yeah.
even being on point to my macros, one, dairy screwed me over big time. And today is like the first day where I was like, oh, wow, we're finally bringing some inflammation down. But the poor sleep and the high stress 100% have been retaining a ton of water. And it's not so much the worry of the weight gain on the scale, it's how my body feels. So it's
Yeah.
hard, like I'm still rock solid, but it's like a layer of water just like sitting on top of my skin.
Yeah, it's hard to explain, right? Because somebody looks at you and they might be like, "Oh, what's I don't get it." But it's like the way you feel. Like a lot of that is how you feel, and you don't want
Yeah.
to feel terrible. But yeah, it's stress can really mess you up. That's what. But I'm glad that at least your prep went well. At least you didn't,
Yes.
have those kind of issues.
It went really well. Yeah.
Right.
So luckily I prioritize that.
So how many shows did you do before you got your pro card?
One.
One show, really?
Yeah. So my first show was June 3rd of this year. And
Okay.
then we went from Atlantic States, which was June 3rd. And then 3 weeks later to Universe, which was June 30th. And then I won my class and won my pro card.
Mm. So, how did you expect that? I'm just pulling up a picture of you on your Instagram with your pro card here.
There it is. There she is.
Yeah. Did you expect to do so well, or were you just going in there and be like, okay, we'll just see what happens, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, it's a great question. Um, there's like two parts to that. So with the first, I had kept it very, very real for myself. I had everybody in my ear being like, you're gonna win. You're gonna win
Mhm.
at least Atlantic States for sure. You're gonna win your pro card. And although it was very nice hearing it, and it's great that people could see something in me that I might not be seeing, um, I didn't want that to take me out of like what could be the reality of somebody just as good, just as determined, that was going to win, right? Like was going to
Mhm.
step forward and beat me for all the right reasons.
Right.
So I kept my head in the game being like, I'm not letting these birds chirp in here, get to me, and be like, yeah, I'm going to walk in and win. So I expected to train and treat this as though I had to prove myself to get to that point.
Mhm.
Um, so I was just very realistic. I knew that the chances were very high, especially for Atlantic States. Um, but you just never know, right? You never
Mhm.
know who's going to show up, and you never know if somebody, like I said, was going to come in and be better. So I kept my head on straight, and I trained, and I worked on my presentation and my routine, and I went in wanting to do nothing but win, but I didn't
Mhm.
expect anything, if that
Right.
makes
Yeah, that's a good answer. Yeah, that's a good answer. Sometimes, like, it's a weird thing, right? Like, some confidence is important, but also like being realistic is also important. I feel like some people put so much emphasis on confidence that it appears to be unrealistic.
sense. Like people, I don't know. I mean, it's cool to be all confident and like really boast about that kind of stuff, but like humble yourself, like take it easy, you know? And
Right. Yeah. Just like you, there's other athletes out there, the training
yeah,
just as hard,
yeah,
I think it's the struggle that like makes it exciting, It's like,
really.
yeah.
It was so much fun. And like even when I stepped off stage at Atlantic States, my boyfriend came over, he hugged me and he was like, congratulations. And he was like,
Mm-hmm.
are you satisfied? Because it looked like it was like an easy win for me. And I wasn't expecting him to ask me that. And I was like, I guess, I don't know. I guess so. And my whole thing was, my goal was not Atlantic States, it's to get to nationals. So
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to win Atlantic States, yes. But I knew like my work was not done until I was to step foot on national stage. So the fact that I was now moving in that direction, I was like, I think I'll be more satisfied once we get to nationals and once we see the outcome of what nationals is for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I was really excited for nationals because I knew that I would be up against girls just like me, if
So
that
did
makes
you,
sense.
yeah, no, it totally makes sense. Yeah. So Atlantic States, you won. Is that where you said you got your pro card, or no? That
So
qualify
yes, that qualified me
that
for
qual.
nationals. Yep.
Okay, and nationals is where you won your
Yep,
pro card.
exactly. And yeah, those girls are houses. They are next
Yeah.
level. And I don't take PEDs. I don't take anabolics.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I knew we were doing great because of my genetics and my coach, which Mark Tominick. Um, we're a great team together. And I
Mm-hmm.
knew he would do everything in his power to always continue to steer me in the right direction as being prepared. Like he doesn't let anybody walk on stage unless you belong on stage.
Right.
No matter what was going through my mind at any point, like I'm not big enough, or I'm too small now, I'm getting too lean, I'm this or that, or he like leveled me out the entire time. So that kept me confident with it. Like I didn't put the worry on me. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
this is on him. I'm just going to follow what he has planned. And that's it. Like I
Yeah.
stopped looking in the mirror at points because I was like picking myself apart to be like, you're not this, you're not that. Where are your legs? When are your legs going to come out?
Mm-hmm.
But then you arrive at nationals and you're like, oh shit, like now it's game on. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
those are, woo,
I've heard people say that like the jump up in competition when you go to nationals is huge. It's
huge.
yeah.
I mean, literally, you get your pro card, right? You get an
Mm-hmm.
opportunity to win your pro card, but like you get a pro card because they're telling you like you're ready for a pro stage,
Right.
right?
Right.
And I had to keep reminding myself like you are going to go up against girls who might win their pro card, and the next week they might enter Texas pro stage, right? Whichever
Right.
the name of that, but like
Right.
this is it. Like you're gonna go big right now, so just keep that in the back of your front of your
Yeah,
mind.
yeah. And I mean, that's amazing that you're able to accomplish this without like the use of PEDs. Because I mean, obviously, bodybuilding, that's a common theme. And
Yeah,
have you and I don't want to talk about this too much, but have you thought about
ever
your
doing
your progression? Yeah, and like not now, but in the future as you become more seasoned pro, do you think you'll ever have like
ever.
waver in that? Yeah.
My coach and I we know that it's a conversation that needs to be
Mm-hmm.
had, but to be completely transparent with you, I have not thought about it.
Mm-hmm.
I know the risks that I would take not doing it and still entering a pro stage. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying I wouldn't do well or great, but I know that it's probably a lot lower of a chance to do as well as I would love to do.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and a big reason, one, personal reasons, of course,
Mm-hmm.
each
Mm-hmm.
their own, but also like I'm with a man that, we speak about a future together. And a big part of my future is like,
So,
like I
mm-hmm.
want that more in my near future than I would having to worry about coming out of all that. And risking the chance of not being able to get pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
So those things I definitely, they weigh
Yeah.
heavy on me.
Yeah, for sure. No, I completely um yeah, I completely understand that. There's a lot more in life than bodybuilding. And it's definitely a decision that you don't even need to make really at this point, because as I was looking through your page and stuff, I mean, unless you the fact that so you told me you're not, but if I'm just looking at your pictures and I didn't speak with you, I wouldn't have necessarily thought that. And
Yeah,
I say that as a compliment because, you
that
don't
is,
want yeah, you don't want people to be to be like, you look natural. Like
yeah, exactly.
especially if you aren't.
You
But
can see like there are photos if you see me in person, there's definitely like, I mean, I get doubted all the time. Like people are like, yo,
mhm,
okay. I'm
yeah,
like, why people lie, which is why I know why people
right.
roll their eyes about it. But I'm very open. I'm very transparent about these things. And I think it's important to be able to use my platform with something like that too, if I were to be using it. So even if I were to change my decision down the line, I would talk freely about it.
Sure. And
But
yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, what I was going to say is when you were to see me next to the girls on stage, you can see like how my fullness isn't the same. Um, like that, what do they say? It's like a saran wrap looking glute
Mhm.
ham tie-in. I don't have that. Like, and that
Mhm.
could come in more when we build up my glutes, which is definitely like that was judges' feedback. Bring up your glutes and bring up your legs more. Um, but to have that like saran wrap look, it's very
Yeah, it's a
hard.
different thing. Do you use diuretics?
No,
No. See
no.
that's going to be that's another thing. It's a lot of diuretic use in pre-stage peak week,
Yeah, he
So
was water loading me and then we
mhm,
pulled back on water.
mhm.
But, and maybe this is because I am natural, he was actually giving me more water and I was responding very well,
Yeah.
right? So, and again, that kind of approach for one of his athletes, like me, might work
Mhm.
perfectly. For another, might not. So it's
Yeah,
how Francesca's body and physique was responding to the water loading and pulling and then giving it
sure.
back more.
Well, that's why you need a coach that like knows you, understands you, like works with you and listens to you and listens to
And
your
also just
body.
like knows what they're doing
Right,
because
that too, that helps.
coaches out there. Yeah. And him and his whole team is like next level.
Yeah.
They're just amazing.
I mean, you don't want any coach using you as a guinea pig or experimenting,
Yeah.
male or female, but especially for like females, because like at least that's the way it seems to me. But women have a like it's more detrimental to them if you don't get things right with them. So
Definitely. I mean, even now the goal was literally after the show, he said, we're going to be focusing on getting healthy again, because obviously things are out of whack. And then we grow. So
mhm,
it's now a matter of how long will it be until I guess maybe my body fat set point to be at a healthier place than it is, and then get my period back and then get hormones regulated again.
mhm, mhm.
Um, so we'll see, but it's
Yeah.
definitely,
Yeah. No, I get it. And yeah, to your point as far as the transparency, I mean, I really don't even I mean, I kind of understand because people don't want to lose their followers who think that they're natural, that's why they lie. But at this point, everybody there's a lot more open knowledge about PEDs, and
yes,
people are a lot more open, like people that are top 5 in Olympias, like they're not nobody is as restrictive with that knowledge anymore. So like I feel like anybody who's like lying about it is kind of like they're kind of, I don't know, it's just not like a good look.
yeah,
I rather you have like the followers that that are interested in you than try to like finagle stuff, and
yeah,
it's, I don't know, it's just a weird thing. So,
yeah,
oh, I'm all natural. Well, obviously that's not true, but whatever. So
yeah, exactly.
what do you think about the division as a whole, like now that you're a pro, the pro wellness division, like you think they got it right with Fran? Like, who do you like? You know, any thoughts on him?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they've now, or rather are now finally seeing like what that physique is that represents wellness.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, Francielle is like, there's no other like her. She is just like the most incredible in all ways. Issa is just next level too. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
all of these girls are phenomenal. But I will say the first two wellness girls, the second I was like, wellness is what I want to do, I popped onto YouTube and I Googled, no, I searched, sorry, wellness competitors. And then boom, I got Julia Renee to pop up, and then
Mm-hmm.
also Sophie Brewster. Sophie was, they both were vlogging at the time,
Yeah, yeah.
still are, but so I watched a whole ton of their stuff and I was like, okay, this is cool. All right, cool. Let me go check them out on Instagram. Kind of did some research there. And then finally I started to learn other athletes. Sophie was trying to get her pro card. Now she has her pro card, which was
Mm-hmm.
really cool to see that unfold for her. Julia actually has a very similar story where I think she also got her pro card on her second show.
Mm-hmm.
With I think a little bit of a gap in between her shows, if I remember correctly. It was her second or third show she got her pro card. So then I was like, oh my gosh, that's so inspirational, not knowing that I would have a very similar story.
Right.
Then, who's like my favorite female ever in this sport now, is Shelby Talon.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so she just competed for her pro debut this past weekend and got second. Unbelievable. And I found her when actually, my girlfriend Bree, she sent me her page and I was like, who is that? And that was when she won her pro card. Followed, sent her a message. I was like, oh my gosh, you were amazing. But like, I took some time to dissect her page and I really respected her as an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
And also the way that she promoted her page, like about herself. You know, a lot of these girls out there, to each their own again, but it's
Mm-hmm.
not the way that I would represent myself.
So so you're saying like they're I'm just gonna take a stab at what you mean. It's a
Take the
little
wild
too
guess.
provocative, or yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, it's like, if you do this for a living and, you know, those kinds of things are what gets you extra income, or it's whatever for you,
Mm-hmm.
I respect it. I do. It's just, that means it's just not my way of doing things for myself.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, I completely understand where you're coming from. It's like I, you know, I care about a lot about athletes, you know, and I follow, you know, decent amount of athletes, and some of them are women. But if it gets like too provocative, I have to kind of back out a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
because then I have to ask myself, what am I following you for? And you know, so.
Yes. And then there's also too that comes with it, like having interest in wanting to reach out to companies or them reaching out to you,
Mhm.
and who are your athletes? What are they representing? And when I were to,
Mhm.
because I've seen it where I will go on to somebody's page, meaning the companies, check their athletes out, check their pages out. And then I'm like, oh, cool. Okay. So 3 of these females have an OnlyFans.
Yeah.
Now, do I know what's part of that? No, I don't know what you're actually selling, but based off of the images that you're putting here, I can probably take a lucky guess.
Right, right. Exactly. Yeah.
I just, I, I don't want to be associated with companies like that, you know?
Mhm.
Not
I
to like
agree.
support as a brand, like if I want to purchase something that's different, but I don't want to necessarily have a sponsorship as an athlete with them.
Correct. Well, yeah, you have a particular image and I don't know what the word is, like a representation of who you are as a person that you want to
Yes,
present. And you know, if that doesn't line up with who you are, then
totally,
you know, so
totally,
makes sense.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 I get it. Yeah, so I'm sorry, I kind of went off tangent there for a
Oh,
second,
that's
but
okay.
yeah, so you were talking about how you looked up these girls, you were, you know, you were really impressed in how they were, you know, presenting themselves on their page, and so I guess at that point, we were talking about like situation with the wellness division in the
Yeah.
pros. Mhm.
Yeah. So like people like Shelby, and then I'm sure you know Alexis Adams.
Yeah.
Um, I love them. I love everything about their work ethic, and that's the kind of, you know, inspiration that I go for with it. But
Mhm.
as far as the industry with wellness in particular, I think it's some, there's almost like some of these shows I'm like, oh my gosh, these girls are getting huge. Like these
Yeah.
legs are next level large.
Mhm.
And that's
Mhm.
not a bad thing. It's just when I look at it and I'm like, okay, well, now you want to be a part of this as a pro athlete. Can you hang? Like, can you really do this, especially without anabolics? Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's generally the question that kind of comes up. Like, so most people agree that they have it absolutely right with Fran, and everyone seems to love Fran. Even I've never seen such support for an athlete, especially by people within their own division. So like everybody seems to love Fran. But once Fran, I don't think anyone's going to beat her, but once she leaves and she's done,
Yeah.
um what happens then? Like my choice would be Issa, but like you said, there's a lot of girls that are coming up with their legs are almost bodybuilder style legs, like with smaller upper bodies. So it's like, so I wonder how they're gonna move this division. I hope they don't make it too extreme, so.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's crazy because a lot of girls who are very interested in wanting to start or get involved in wellness, they're like, well, I want to get involved with wellness because they're not as big as figure or physique. And when you look at these girls, sometimes they are just as big or if not bigger. And you're like, no, the only thing that you're looking at is just the way it's being presented differently on stage, right?
Mhm.
And I think a huge draw again is the presentation overall. It's very appealing. It's more on the sexier side. It looks more feminine to women, which is why they're so turned on by getting involved in it.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's
Yeah.
a large category now, physically.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a variety of women that are in it now, and it's like it's growing. The
Yeah,
girls are growing, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see where it goes, because I think that's a intrinsic problem, like with competitive bodybuilding in every division. It seems like everyone is getting bigger. There was a time where even the bikini girls were getting bigger. Like, so they had to like kind of bring that back a little bit. Yeah, by rewarding some of this, more streamlined, smaller
yeah,
girls. So but see, that all depends on the judges. They'll whatever they reward is what everyone's going to be striving for. So.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And what I will say, so Alexis Adams
Mhm.
has a podcast as well.
Mhm.
And she was even saying too, like a lot of these, because when I was in prep, all I did was listen to podcasts when in the shower, cleaning dishes, whatever I was doing. I was like, I just wanted to, one, kind of zone out, but also learn from these other women.
Mhm.
And she was constantly saying, like, it's not always about having the biggest legs or being the largest in wellness on stage. The judges are looking at so much more than that. And I was like, okay. So that really helped me understand before I got to nationals. Because that was something I was definitely being pretty hard on myself for,
Mhm.
was like not being ready and not being able to win, since I felt like I was not going to be the biggest. And I will tell you, I wasn't the smallest. I was probably one of the smaller girls for sure.
Mhm.
But I had the other parts to it that I can now see that separated me from them, right? Like I had the tiny waist. Um, I had good posing, I had good presentation, which I'm finally able to take my prep goggles off, put them to the side and see things clearly now. Um, So I don't necessarily think like the size is always going to be the winning reason of why you got first or something. I think like she's not the Francielle is not the biggest. She doesn't mean she's got small legs, obviously, because she does
Right.
not, but she's the most proportioned for what they're looking for.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Alexis actually has been on this show in the past, and I really, like her and support her not only for her bodybuilding career, but also she's a nurse, and I'm a nursing school myself, so
A travel nurse, nonetheless.
yeah. So that was exciting to have her on in the past.
Yeah,
But looking at Alexis, she herself on stage is not like the largest girl as far as legs are concerned, but she does very well for herself.
yeah,
She did well in the Arnold. I was there this last year. So I mean, she's progressively like placing higher, getting better, and so yeah, to your point, to her point, yeah, I mean, it's not only about that, but it's also how things look on you, right? Like,
yes,
so I mean, somebody else might, in the inches and millimeters and whatever, might have bigger legs, but how does it look on them versus how do your legs look on you, and that comparison there too. So
totally.
for sure. So, you having your pro card, assessing the waters now. What are your plans? Do you have a show in mind? Like, what are you thinking?
That's definitely up to my coach
Okay.
for sure, but I would love to do the New York Pro next year, which is, I don't know if it's the same date every single year, but it tends to be the last weekend of May. We would just need to get me healthy like now, which is obviously
Mm-hmm.
what we're doing, and then go into our growth phase, which would be for a good amount of months. So if that gives us a good amount of time to grow and then be able to prep for May, then I think New York Pro would be great.
What's
Um,
what's your prep time span usually? Like 12 weeks, 15 weeks?
well, the first, since this was only my first season, it was from February to June 3rd, which was 15 weeks.
15 weeks.
Um, the good thing though, what we learned in that time frame was that I was I I was completely different. My look was completely different from June 3rd to June 30th. When
Mm.
we backed out of Atlantic States and got ready for nationals, he was putting me through reverse. And I was just like, my body was loving the food. I was
Mhm.
growing. Um, so maybe I would do like 18 weeks. Maybe I would do 19, 20. I don't know.
Yeah. The reason I'm asking that is because I'm just trying to calculate in my mind. So if you get completely healthy to the point where you're ready to grow, how many months does that leave you to grow? That's kind of what I was thinking about. But
Exactly.
yeah.
I would say the most, a great amount of time, I mean, a year, but um my body does respond to growing very well, which is
Mhm.
nice. And since I've set a new body fat set point for myself, I think we're going to grow even better this time around. But I would say like 6 months would be
Yeah.
definitely, and
Yeah.
hopefully because my body does respond to a deficit so well that it could put me potentially into a great position by like January to start prep February again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, you're right at the line, but you have it, but it looks like you have enough time, So
I hope so.
yeah, yeah,
See.
yeah. Well, that'd be exciting. The New York Pro is a big show. It's an important show. A lot of people have made their name off the New York Pro. So
Yeah. Yeah. And it's Atlantic States and Universe were both at the same venue. So
hmm
it's that same Marriott hotel. So that would just be cool. It's same stage. It's right here, like basically in my backyard. I'm in New York. That's in New Jersey.
hmm
So I mean, it's so convenient. Um, and it's also, yeah, I mean,
yeah, that'd be perfect.
yeah.
That'd be perfect. Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, I really appreciate you coming on. I think we had a great discussion, talked about everything, you know, so that was
Yeah.
exciting. If somebody wanted to reach out to you for coaching, nutrition, maybe another podcast, what would be the best way for them to do that?
I would say definitely my Instagram. My Instagram handle is Francesca Vitality. No, that is not my last name. People think that's my last name, but it's not. And yeah, I mean, can hit me up wherever at any time.
Awesome. And guys, I'm going to link everything at the bottom of this video just to make it easier for you. And again, Francesca, thank you so much. You have a great rest of the evening. Take care.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate your time.
Of course. Of course. Take care. Bye.
Bye.